thus far, we've written code that where there's an if test, and if the test is true, we print the row in the data. So in this short section, I want to show how instead you would just count the number of rows where the if test is true. And that's more akin to what you really want to do with computers. So in order to do this, we're going to have to add some novel code into code we've been doing. So it's described here, but I'll point out the parts in this code example. So there's three things that have to be added to do counting. One is I'm going to introduce a new variable, which I'll call count, and I'm just going to set it to 0, and I'm going to do that before the loop starts running. So count equals 0. Then inside of the loop, inside the if statement, where I print the row as we've done many times before, but then I'm also going to have this code count equals count plus 1. And that's kind of a funny looking line. I'll tell you what that does is whatever value is stored inside of count, it increases it by 1. So it just bumps it up from 5 to 6 or 10 to 11 or whatever. But let me explain how this works. So in mathematics, this line doesn't really make any sense. Like, what value is equal to itself plus 1? But the reason this works in the computer is that the function of the equal sign in computer code is actually more simple than it is in mathematics. And the key thing to understand is that it first evaluates the right-hand side. And then only once that's been completely resolved to get a value, then that value is stored into the variable in the left-hand side. So imagine the very first time this runs. So count is 0, and then it gets to this line. So the first thing it's going to do is evaluate the right-hand side. So count is 0, so 0 plus 1 is 1. So this highlighted part is 1. So once it's figured that out, then it stores 1 into count. So now count is 1. So you can see right there the action where coming into the line, count was 0, and then coming out, it's 1. So it bumped it up. So then the next time it sees this line, the if statement is true, then it'll evaluate the right-hand side. Count is 1. So 1 plus 1 is 2. So having figured out that it's 2, then it stores 2 into count. So now count is 2. So ultimately, you don't need to have a total command of the details of this thing. You just need to know that the form x equals x plus 1 for some variable, it just bumps it up by 1 each time it's run. So I was saying there's three parts. So we've got the set to 0 and the count equals count plus 1 inside the if statement. And then finally, we just print out whatever value is left in the count after the for loop has run through all its times. So let's just try this. So if I run this, what we see is that the loop runs, and the if statement here checks for names beginning with A. So we just see all these A names. And then down at the end, there's this one line, count equals 258. So what that shows is the for loop, count was started at 0. The for loop ran all its times. The if statement was true, apparently 258 times out of the 2,000 times. And then we get this count colon 258, prints it out because of this line. So that one runs after the loop is done. So all these internal prints are done. All right, so let me try some experiments here. So one easy thing to do is like, well, what if I just remove this print that's inside the loop? So I'm still going to run through the rows. I still have the if statement, but then the only thing that happens inside the if statement is count equals count plus 1. So just bump it up by 1. So now if I run this program, I just get this one line of output. I run it, and it just says, bam, 258. So this is beginning to resemble more what you think of as the form of computers, taking in some massive data and kind of sifting through it and giving you kind of a final answer. All right, so let me try some more problems here. And as usual, we've got the solutions available. How many names start with X? And then compare it to how many start with Y. So if I want to count how many names start with X, I just change the count and the count equals plus 1. Count equals count plus 1, I can just keep. So I'll just say, how many start with X? So if I run it, it says 6. So now it says, oh, well, what if I want to know how many start with Y? Well, I mean, we can see all the structure we keep, and I just have to change that one thing to Y. And it's 17. All right, so I guess more names start with Y. A lot more names start with Y than with X. And it says, for the third one, how many girl names begin with A? Then change to count how many boy names begin with A. All right, so now this is going to bring in material from last time. I want to use an and here. So I'll say starts with A. I'll say and row dot get field gender equal to girl. So that's the test, and then inside I just say count equals count plus 1. All right, 169. So the follow-up question is how many boy names? All right, so for boy I would just change this. So this notion of the if and the test is the same for counting. It's really just, whereas previously we would have said print row, now I just have this count equals count plus 1, so I can do the counting. Oh, 89. All right, so more girl names begin with A than boy names. Okay, so that's our first look at basic counting. So let's try some exercises.